One more thing. What does Klay Thompson bring to the Dallas Mavericks? Let's bring in Locked On Warriors host Charlie Walter to see what he saw from him in the last couple of years with the Warriors. What's different about Klay? Where's his defense at? It's probably the biggest question on today's One More Thing.
I'm here because I have to be.
Dallas is going to get a seat at the table.
That's it. It's me versus the machine.
Don't let his whiteness take away from his quickness.
You can rest later. You're young.
I never recovered beer.
Wait. One more thing.
All right, welcome in Charlie Walter from the Locked On Warriors podcast to tell us about Klay Thompson. We brought in Kylan Mills, your co-host, a couple of weeks ago to talk about Klay Thompson. Now I want to get your thoughts, as now we're a little farther removed. Maybe my questions have been a little bit more refined now that I've looked into Klay Thompson film and all that. Let's talk about Klay Thompson, what he was on the Warriors now, what can we expect from him on the Mavericks now. Let's start with this one. Klay had a down year, or what we call a down year for Klay Thompson. 38% from three is a down year for Klay. What do you think caused the drop in his three-point efficiency last season?
I feel like everything just comes back to athleticism, mainly just the spacing with athleticism. I remember seeing a clip probably 2 months ago. I'm sure all of the listeners and viewers of the show have seen it. Klay Thompson playing the pickup right with a bunch of probably D2 basketball players, no one that I recognize from the association. And even in that video, he's just struggling to get the same separation that he once was, causes him to miss short most of the time. But still, you get Klay Thompson an open look, he's going to bury it. He still has just enough athleticism to get enough space to put up enough shots to score 18 a game last season. Like you mentioned, a down year, 38% from three, hit 268 of them last year. Here's a guy to steal the Chris Collinsworth. Here's a guy.
There you go.
Here's a guy that a lot of people think is washed up, and he hit 268 threes last year, which is tied third most of his career. So what he's going to give you is still a bunch of three-pointers, but at the same time, the percentage dropped just a little bit. Age, which, I mean, it has nothing to do with age. It's just when you get a little bit older, after all the injuries and everything, you lose a step. When you lose a step, you lose the ability to get more space than you got in the past. And that, to me, makes 2-3% of a difference.
That's sort of the hope, that it's just he didn't get the space on the shots that he had.
He forced up a lot of shots last year.
Let's
put it that way.
Is that I don't think he'll have to create as many of those shots this season. The Mavericks hope that he can do some of that a little bit here and there to give Luka and Kyrie some respite, but he's going to get a lot of shots created for him. I don't know that, in the last couple of years with Klay, has the Warriors offense created as many wide open threes as he's had in the past when he was playing with, Curry and Kevin Durant. I just don't think that he was getting the same kind of open looks that he was. And I think with Luka, he should get those kind of looks again and get spoon-fed a little bit more. And so that's sort of the hope with Luka and Klay on the Mavs now, is that the efficiency, even if it is 38%, though, I think we'll take that because he's replacing, Derrick Jones Jr., he's replacing Tim Hardaway Jr., and those guys were as streaky as they come.
Yeah, no doubt, man.
The other thing I have about Klay, if you were covering the Mavericks, let's say, change it up. All right, you moved to Texas. It's 100 degrees here. You're covering the Mavs now. What's the biggest question or concern you'd have about Klay Thompson fitting into this group? We talked about the role on your show, and so what would be the big concern?
I guess the big thing is it sounds like one of the reasons that I think he ended up leaving the Warriors is just, whether you want to call it disrespect or just a lack of appreciation, something along those lines, where the Warriors were kind of relegating him to the bench, relegating, one of the two. And Brandon Bajemski was kind of being, groomed to be the heir to Klay Thompson, essentially. He's what caused Klay Thompson to go to the bench when it was all said and done. And I think that we'll go disrespect rubbed off the wrong way on him just a little bit, to the point where Klay is, he's an emotional guy. He wears that on his sleeve a bit. And my biggest concern would be that he's coming in with the notion that he is going to be Game 6, 2018 Klay Thompson, has that chip, always has it, trying to prove something. And that he still internally believes, like, things went sideways with the Warriors a little bit. I just needed a new change of scenery. I wasn't the same player that I was, and I'm probably not going to be that same player, but I still think I'm all-star caliber, one of the best players in the league, and can come out and create my own shots and really dominate games. That would scare me a little bit, because I personally don't think he's that player. But if he accepts a lesser role and does what you mentioned, where it's like, all right, Kyrie and Luka are going to create. Klay just needs to be a spot up shooter. He needs to be a serviceable defender, and he needs to be someone that, can put up 18 points per game and shoot it 38% from three. If he does that and accepts that role, I think he could be a pretty valuable player. The question's going to be a superstar of that caliber that even last year, until the last few months of the season, was still treated as a massive piece to the team and to, potentially the future. Like how is that going to play out? That would be my biggest concern.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp will help you if you've got stuff that you need to talk about, you need to work through, you need to think about, and stuff that you're like, all right, I'm just going to avoid that. I'll put it to the side, put it in a little box in the side of my mind, and I don't have to worry about it. Well, sometimes you need to take some time and just face it and just look at it and say, all right, I've got to figure this out, or else it's going to be stuck there in the back of my mind all the time. And it depends on what it is for every single person. Everything's different. What's big to you may not be big to somebody else, and what's big to somebody else may not be big to you. But that thing is big to you. You need to talk about it. You need to work through it. And you need to help yourself reconnect with, being healthy, mentally, all that kind of stuff. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. I've used BetterHelp before. I enjoyed it because all I had to do was fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today. Get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
Yeah, there's two things with Klay after his introductory press conference where he tried not to read too much into the answers, but that's really the only time we've heard from him in like talking about a Mavs context, is that he talked about defense and he talked about defending the best player on the other team. And he looked at Najee Marshall and Quentin Grimes, who were next to him, and was like, yeah, I'm glad that you guys are here because I used to have to do that all the time, and now maybe I don't have to. And then you're like, oh, I think the Mavs are still going to ask you to do that a little bit, Klay.
I hope not. No, I don't think so.
But then you go, okay, is Klay going to still want to prove himself, or is he saying, all right, I'm at the point in my career when I need to take a step back a little bit? Do I have to have this much of a chip on my shoulder? Was that maybe a wake up call for him? And so I am curious to see how he reacts to that. And if he reacts poorly, then all of a sudden it becomes a Jason Kidd situation where he has to come in and manage this thing. But I think it'll work out. The Mavs have like narrowed everybody down into their role so well the last couple of years and put guys into the right spots that I think that Klay will fit right into what they want him to do.
Look, and I think he's a professional. There was a little bit of pettiness on the way out the door with unfollowing the Warriors and that sort of thing. But for the most part, he went out pretty smooth, gave the apology, or not the apology, but rather the thank you to Dub Nation. And it seemed like a pretty smooth transition to where it was like, you know what? This is what it is. I no longer am the player that I once was in the Warriors franchise, and I'm going to go somewhere else and see if I can just kind of revitalize my career or just take a little bit of pressure off me because I don't have to be, Game 6 Klay, 2018 Klay Thompson this upcoming year. So I think he's a professional. He is going to handle it the right way, but ego is real, man. And I'm not saying that he has a huge one, but I mean, when you are the face, one of the faces, like a three-headed monster between Draymond, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson, like the face of not just an era, not just a decade, whatever it is, like all-time history. Like he's statue material. Steve Kerr's already said it. He's going to have a statue outside or inside of Chase Center someday. And when you have that mentality and that, buzz surrounding you, it's hard to go in somewhere else and accept the fact that you're, now Scottie Pippen on the Portland Trailblazers.
Well, hopefully he has a couple more years in him with the Mavericks because they signed him to that 3-year deal. With his defense, you mentioned
Scottie Pippen on the Blazers was good, man. Don't sleep on him.
He was
I'm
okay.
not disrespecting. I'm just saying he did come back from some pretty gruesome injuries.
You've scoffed now at Klay's defense a couple of times. Yeah. Where is his defense compared to where it was before? We know we're not getting the all defensive team Klay Thompson. He's a couple of injuries and age and a couple of years removed from that now. But where is his defense compared to where it was?
Hold on. Let me see the camera here. This is where it was.
High. No, it's lower. It's flatlining.
It's low, man. He was really good individual defender. Like he could guard the team's best player.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, the press conference if Dallas is looking forward to him doing that. But he lost a lot of his athleticism, man. And I mean, that's just what happens. One, as you age, we are seeing it personally getting into our 30s. Like the body just does not work the same way it once did. And you could prolong that. You could fight Father Time. You're watching Steph Curry and LeBron James do it if you stay healthy. I mean, once you get hurt, once you tear your ACL and then follow it up with an Achilles, like, good luck, man. Good luck. So he was always an elite on the ball defender. I don't think he's always been the best team defender. Not saying he was bad, but just, wasn't elite in comparison to his on the ball defense. But I think after the injury, it's been more of like a nostalgia thing to think that Klay Thompson is the same defender that he once was. Like and I think when he came back the 2021, 2022 year against Boston, he had some moments where it was like he could still defend a little bit. Right. But by the end of last year, I think it was safe to say that he's out there because he shoots shoots really well and scores.
We remember it well in the 2022, playoffs and the Western Conference Finals, that Klay. So I think if they can get any semblance of that version of Klay, I think that the Mavs will be okay. The Mavs
can't rebound, man. He can't really switch, doesn't provide a ton of value. I mentioned how he doesn't get the separation offensively. A lot of that is due to just lateral quickness. It's not his fault, man. You got to give the man his flowers. The fact that he's come back is insane. He's 34, 35 years at this point in time. So the fact that he's still able to play at an extremely high level is incredible, but defense is just not a strong suit of his game anymore. And he could prove us wrong. We'll see about it. But I think you ask any Warriors fan, they're not, terribly upset aside from the nostalgia factor that he left. And it's partly due to the fact that he couldn't guard a traffic cone.
That's the thing, is if all of a sudden now it's Klay, Luka, and Kyrie guarding all in the same backcourt. Now how do you make a good defense out of that? And that's the question the Mavs will have to answer in probably the first couple months of the season. You mentioned the nostalgia factor. What's the thing you're going to miss the most about Klay?
I was kind of reading into this and I was like, well, is this a trick question? I was thinking, is it going to be the Instagram videos of him riding a boat across the bay into Chase Center? Is that
bringing
what in a captain hat? Is that what I'm going to miss the most? Or the one-liners? Another thing that he did that is a little bit niche, he does the paper airplane. Every press conference, he folds up a paper airplane and then fires them into the media section. Actually drilled one of the Cron reporters in the face. And he's, sorry. So that little stuff that he does. He's a fun-loving dude. He's a good guy, and I think that is going to be missed. But that's a trick question, man. You made me think way too much about it because what I'm going to miss most, 3-pointers. I mentioned 268 of them last year. He had 300 threes a couple of seasons ago. Like that's what Klay Thompson does, along with being a really good defender, probably snubbed as an all defender back in his prime. Along with that, he just had the ability to score. It's catch and shoot. It's a quick release. He's tall, so he can get it off over people. And he's going to do the same thing in Dallas, even if it's at 37%, and everyone's like, Klay can't do it anymore. It's still 37%. That's one thing that I can promise Mavericks fans he's going to do.
Well, absolutely. 260 threes, by the way, is just so many threes. Like you have to go back to.
He chucks them, man.
Not that long ago.
Last year.
Not that long ago, and teams weren't making 260 threes.
I know.
I know.
And think about it. I think he was one of 3 players, I believe, in the NBA last year that shot 9 threes a game with Curry, and there was one other player. Was it Luka? May have been Luka.
Yeah, Luka did.
Yeah, Luka. So those are the 3 that shot 9 a game. So he's going to chuck them up. He's going to chuck them up there.
The volume of threes is going up for the Mavericks, even though they lost Tim Hardaway, who chucks them as well, just not as well. Charlie Walter chucks them up as best as anybody. Go follow him on social media. I'll put his links in the description below. Thanks you for hanging out with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on anytime.